Zariel stood frozen for only a moment after Kaelithra's disappearance, the weight of his failure washing over him. But there was no time to dwell. He would not lose his princess again. Not to the shadows, not to anyone. His fists tightened as he rose to his full height, his determination blazing in his eyes. "We need to act fast," Zariel said, his voice cold with resolve. The pack nodded in agreement, already moving to spring into action. Ashley reached for her talisman, the small stone warm under her touch, as she called upon Eliana Vale. The air shimmered for a moment before a glowing portal formed. Eliana stepped through, her face grave as she surveyed the scene. "What's happened?" Eliana asked, sensing the tension immediately. "She's gone," Eli said quietly, walking over to Eliana with a piece of her damage detection device. "And whatever pulled her into the shadows, it wasn't something I've ever seen before." Eliana's eyes darkened. She reached out her hand, casting a spell to feel the lingering magic in the air. The energy around the courtyard was heavy, almost suffocating, and there was a pulse of darkness she had felt only once before. "This darkness, it's ancient," Eliana murmured, her eyes narrowing as she focused. "It's from Nythoria, from the sealed realm." Everyone exchanged worried glances, realizing the implications. If something from Nythoria had come through, then the forces that had once consumed Karina's home were not entirely gone. Eli's discovery. As the others continued to search for clues, Eli returned to her workshop, her mind racing. Something about the shadows and the surge of power felt connected to the eggs they had recovered. When she entered her lab, her eyes immediately locked onto one of the 3 eggs. It was glowing, a bright, pulsating light that hadn't been there before. She approached slowly, her heart pounding in her chest as she watched the light grow brighter with every step. "What's happening?" Eli whispered to herself, reaching out to touch the egg. The moment her fingers made contact with the smooth surface, the glow intensified, filling the room with a soft, radiant light. For a brief second, she thought she saw something move inside. Her breath hitched. Could this be related to Kaelithra's disappearance? Had the egg somehow responded to the surge of power from the princess? Kaelithra opened her eyes and found herself standing in a cold, familiar room. The air was thick with an oppressive darkness, the kind that clawed at her soul. The surroundings triggered a deep sense of dread, but also an eerie familiarity. She had been here before, long ago when she had been controlled by forces that twisted her into something she barely recognized. In the center of the room, she saw her younger self. A girl no older than 12, thin with haunted eyes, wearing a tattered dress that was once regal. Her skin was pale and her hands trembled slightly as she sat huddled in a corner, a shadow of the warrior Kaelithra had become. The younger version looked up, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and defiance, the same emotions Kaelithra remembered feeling back then. They stared at each other for a long, tense moment. Neither spoke at first, the silence heavy between them. Young Kaelithra stood slowly, her expression guarded, as if not trusting this older, stronger version of herself. "You've come back," the young Kaelithra said, her voice soft but laced with bitterness. "Why?" Kaelithra hesitated, not entirely sure how to answer. "I didn't choose to come back here. I was pulled." She stepped closer, her heart aching for the lost girl before her. We went through so much." "You left me," the younger version hissed, her eyes narrowing. "You became something else. You grew stronger, and you forgot. You forgot the pain." "I didn't forget." Kaelithra shook her head, her voice filled with emotion. "I fought to survive. We fought. That's why I'm here now, because of you." The younger Kaelithra's eyes flickered with doubt. "You grew up. You escaped. But look at me. I'm still here. Stuck in the darkness, waiting, always waiting." Kaelithra took a deep breath, the weight of her past pressing down on her. "I didn't escape. I've been fighting this darkness ever since. But I'm here now. I've come back to face it. We can face it together." For a long moment, the younger version said nothing, her eyes searching Kaelithra's face as though weighing her words. Then slowly she softened, the guarded expression fading. "Do you think we can?" the young Kaelithra whispered, her voice filled with vulnerability. Kaelithra knelt down, reaching out her hand to her younger self. "Yes, together we can." The younger Kaelithra hesitated, but finally reached out, their hands meeting in a fragile connection. The room seemed to tremble, the shadows shifting as the two versions of Kaelithra connected. For the first time, they faced their shared past as one. Meanwhile, back in the present, Eli hurried into the workshop where Aeliana Vale and Zariel were discussing possible ways to track Kaelithra's disappearance. "It's the egg," Eli said, breathless, holding up the glowing object in her hands. "It's reacting. Something's happening, and it's connected to Kaelithra." Zariel's eyes narrowed as he looked at the glowing egg. "We need to figure out what this means. Now." As the younger version of Kaelithra dissolved into her older self, the oppressive shadows that had surrounded her began to fade. The room blurred, and soon she felt herself being pulled away from the memory, her surroundings shifting once again. When her vision cleared, she found herself back in Nythoria, standing in a grand, familiar hall. Her home, the one she had been taken from so long ago. This time, she was an observer, unseen by the figures rushing through the hall. Her parents, regal and imposing, were hurriedly preparing for something. She could see the tension in their faces, the worry in their movements. Her heart clenched as she watched her mother, a woman with flowing dark hair and sharp, kind eyes, hurriedly pack what looked like magical scrolls and charms into a small chest. Her father, tall and strong, wore his armor, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, as if ready for battle at any moment. Kaelithra wanted to reach out to them, to scream that she was here, but no sound left her lips. Instead, she was forced to watch as the scene played out before her. "We don't have much time," her father said, his voice strained. "The darkness is spreading faster than we anticipated." "I know," her mother replied, her voice cracking slightly, though she tried to remain composed. "But we must protect her. She's our only hope. She's the key." Kaelithra's breath hitched. She had known she was sent to Earth to escape the darkness, but hearing the urgency and the love in her parents' voices made it all feel painfully real. Then she saw herself. A child, no more than 4 years old, with wide, innocent eyes, sitting quietly in the corner. Her tiny hands clutched a small doll, unaware of the gravity of the moment. Her mother knelt before her, smoothing the child's hair back gently. "Kaelithra, my sweet, you're going on a journey, but I promise it's for your safety. You must be brave." The child Kaelithra nodded, her eyes trusting but confused. Her mother's hand trembled as she kissed her daughter's forehead. Her father, ever the warrior, stood a few steps away, but even he could not hide the pain in his eyes. "You are the last hope for Nythoria, Kaelithra. When the time comes, you will bring our realm back from the darkness. But for now, you must go." The sadness in his voice sent a chill through the older Kaelithra, and her heart ached for the little girl who had no idea what awaited her. Suddenly, a younger Zariel entered the hall, looking much like the man she had come to know, but his features were softer, less hardened by time. He wore his armor proudly, the crest of her family emblazoned on his chest. "Zariel," her father said firmly, "you will accompany her. You are to protect her with your life. No one, not even the forces of darkness, can know her true identity. Keep her safe, no matter what." Zariel's face was resolute, his loyalty to her family unquestionable. He knelt before the young princess, a silent vow in his eyes. "I will protect her, my lord. She will be safe with me. Kaelithra watched as her younger self was handed over to Zariel, her small hand disappearing into his as they prepared to leave. Her mother's tears silently fell as they exchanged one final look of love and longing with their daughter. "Be strong, my love," her mother whispered. "We will meet again." With that, Zariel lifted the small child into his arms and turned toward the portal that would take them to Earth. Kaelithra's parents stood silently watching their daughter disappear into the unknown, their hearts breaking but knowing they had no other choice. Kaelithra's heart felt as though it would shatter in her chest. The rush of emotions, love, fear, loss, overwhelmed her as she stood there, helpless to intervene. Her parents had believed in her destiny, and had sacrificed everything to ensure her safety. And Zariel? He had sworn to protect her, and even now he was keeping that promise. Suddenly the scene faded, and she felt herself pulled back into the present. Her body felt heavy, and the flood of memories and emotions threatened to drown her. As her vision blurred once more, she could feel herself slipping into unconsciousness. Back in the present, the egg in Eli's lab pulsed brightly, glowing with an intensity that could not be ignored. Eliana Vale reached out her hand, her eyes widening as she sensed the magic within it. "This is not just an egg," Eliana whispered, her voice full of awe. "It's connected to Kaelithra's powers, her very essence." Zariel's face was tense as he looked at Eliana. "What does it mean?" "It means," Eliana said, her eyes still fixed on the glowing egg, "that the princess is waking up to her true power. And this is only the beginning." Kaelithra's vision blurred once more as she slipped further into the past, deeper into Nythoria's history. When her surroundings cleared, she stood in a darkened chamber, the walls adorned with ancient symbols of power. Before her, a circle of elders sat around a glowing cell of pulsating darkness. It was alive, contained but threatening, its very presence oppressive. The elders were in deep discussion, their faces stern and grave. As she moved closer, Kaelithra realized this wasn't just any gathering. This was the moment her world's fate was decided. "This force could change the course of our realm," one elder said, his voice heavy with doubt. "It's dangerous. We don't know if we can control it." "Control it?" another snapped, an air of arrogance in his tone. "We should destroy it before it destroys us. This darkness is too powerful, too unpredictable." Kaelithra's eyes scanned the faces of the elders, but then one figure caught her attention, a younger version of the trader, standing off to the side. He was watching the discussion intently, but his eyes gleamed with ambition. It was clear that his mind was already made up. "We need this power," the trader said smoothly, stepping forward. His voice was calm but persuasive. "If we release it, we could harness it, use it to strengthen our realm beyond all others. Think about what it could bring us: domination, control over the realms that have ignored our greatness." The other elders looked at him, some nodding in agreement, others more wary. But the seed of temptation had already been planted. Kaelithra's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the moment unfold. This was it. This was how it began. The darkness that destroyed her world, the very force that had overtaken Nythoria, had once been a choice made in greed and ambition, and the trader had been behind it all. Her hands clenched into fists as she listened to the voices that argued for and against releasing the darkness. But in the end, the decision was made. "We release it," the head elder said reluctantly, sealing the fate of Nythoria. Back on Earth, the egg in Eli's workshop pulsed violently, growing larger with each passing second. The light it emitted filled the room, blinding in its intensity. Eli, panic rising in her chest, backed away from the egg. "This isn't good," Eli muttered, her voice trembling with fear. "We need to move it. Now." She reached for the egg, but the moment her hands touched it, a searing pain shot through her fingers, forcing her to recoil. I can't touch it. Why is it growing? Ashley asked, her eyes wide as she noticed the intensity of the glow. And look, she pointed outside the window, her voice rising. The stones in the courtyard. They're glowing too. The courtyard stones, ancient and imbued with mystical power, now glowed with the same eerie light as the egg. A faint hum filled the air, vibrating through the very ground they stood on. Something was coming, something they weren't prepared for.
All right, you've made it this far. That means either you like what you're seeing, or you're lost. Either way, no harm in sticking around, right? Go on, hit that subscribe button, join the team, and while you're at it, hit like, because, let's be honest, you're already invested. And the bell? That's for you if you don't want to miss any of the action. You wouldn't want me to come find you. See you soon, and remember, once you're in, you're family.